Welcome Wargamers to the dangerous plains and oases of Ea, because today we're talking all about Wadroon hunting parties. This is a thing we kind of covered a little bit, at least briefly, when I was doing the Wadroon lore. I have a two-part series. I'll leave links to that in the description down below, my entire Conquest lore playlist. But in that, we kind of broke down the structure of what a tribe is. That they're largely a matriarchal system. Everybody has roles, whether you're part of the hunter tribes that go out and defend everybody, or you're part of the working and gathering things because they need so many resources to survive. Those two tasks are held in like equal manner and honor. So it's a very martial culture, but one of the things that's very hard to get, as I'm just kind of listing off how a society functions, is sort of like how it is in action. When I say this is a military that focuses on hit-and-run exercises, what do I mean by that in practice, and what does it look like for orcs who ride dinosaurs? Like, we can explore that so much more. And so in today's video, that's what we're going to do. We have a story that's straight from the Bellum website. We're going to be taking a look at, it's under the living world of Zanduli, the menu code. At least that is my Americanized butchering of what I'm sure is a beautiful sentiment, but this is the character's name, Zanduli. And she is going to give us a lot of insight into how the Wadroon go to war and acquire information. Now, really quickly up top here, if you like this stuff and you want to support the channel or learn more about Conquest, please click the affiliate link in the description down below. You will save 10% on any purchases store-wide and is completely free, and part of that goes to supporting me, and I cannot tell you enough, it is life-changing stuff and it absolutely means the world to me. It supports me, my wife, our cats, all of it. A deep thank you to everyone who has used that link. And I also wanted to throw a shout out for Goonhammer. They've recently started doing more and more Conquest content. That is really hard to say for me. And I would really like you to support them. I'm part of their media network team, and I would just really encourage you. There's some great guys over there trying to get people into Conquest. Share those articles and check out how you can improve your game on Goonhammer. So for those of you who don't know much about the Wadroon, we've talked about them as being a scientific offshoot that the Spire had created. They're essentially fabricated beings, using all of the life magic and all the types of scientific horrors that the Spires have access to create a new race of beings. They were basically thrown out as a smokescreen to let Spires escape their doom, but the Wadroon survived and created their own civilization out in the woods. It is a primitive civilization, but they are not a primitive people, if you know what I mean. By that I mean they have a very deep and rich culture. They understand very well how to use tools in their environment, specifically mastering creatures of their environment, which is why we have so many cool dinosaurs that ride around on. And really what seems to be holding them back is the only quote-unquote safe place, or really I should say uncalled or unmanned place inside of Ea is this big colossal desert with just a few oases fueled by springs throughout it. And so the story of the Wadroon is a whole bunch of outcasts with, they were just made Frankenstein style and then dropped into the desert, and they had to figure all of this out for themselves, and they've done a spectacular job at doing so. But one of the common themes throughout this faction over and over again is the scarcity of their resources. They do not form colossal armies in the same way that other factions can in this game. Like, I'm thinking like ranked, endless hordes of Spire drones or Old Dominion soldiers, that kind of stuff. The Wadroon mostly fight in hit-and-run scenarios where they can attack with overwhelming force to an unprepared or at least under-defended target. They bleed their enemy dry rather than, one big epic confrontation, although they can muster that as well if they need to pull all the tribes together. The War Queen is typically the one who's always in charge of a tribe, and she has a kind of a coterie of captains and advisors below her, both male and female, who she can send out as delegates to go do other stuff. Hey, go to the west and go hunt and gather for food there, come back with anything you find. And these expeditions that are sent out are really quite large. Like, it's not simply, go out there and hunt any animals and come back. You're going to take a hunting party as well as a gatherer party. So now it's this whole mini commune that leaves the main oases to go find another place. And then when they get there, they set up a temporary housing situation. The hunters hunt, the gatherers gather, and then the whole party comes back. So it's a much larger affair than just 3 people going out with a bow, is what I'm trying to say. In charge of this particular expedition is Zanduli, and she is charged with protecting the main oases from threats to the east. And when I say east, I mean the Far East, like the actual edges of the desert. She is sort of like a first detection thing, right? You're going to take your party out there. Not only are you hunting and gathering, but you're just going to like keep an eye on the furthest ridge, like, update scouting information, maps, that kind of thing. And Zanduli leads a fast and agile force into what they simply call the lands of the dead men to gather information about the environment and possibly their enemy. Since they've been around, the Old Dominion has stirred once again, and all of a sudden, things are starting to get strange. And so the War Queen was like, hey, why don't you go check on whatever's going on over there? And as Zanduli gets to their kind of location, they start establishing their little camp, the gatherers start to gather, hunting's going out. But over the course of a few days, all of the people in her pack, no matter what their experience is or where they're working, start to have the same crippling dreams. Dreams of being consumed in darkness and death really just permeating everything. Zanduli at first is like really trying to be the enforcer of like, hey, everybody just focus on your chores. Maybe there's some weird natural stuff going on here. Let's be aware of that. But basically saying like, hey, do your work instead of worrying about your dreams. Much like modern day America. Now, at this time, she had kind of set up a system of security where there's like kind of overlapping patrols, making sure there's nothing coming near the camp to inflict them with these kind of weird visions or whatever. But part of that is that those patrols always have to operate in pairs. And at some point in their stay at this far, far eastern location, one of their scouts comes back without their partner. This raptor rider, Akina, returns to the camp to report they found some colossal tracks of something they have no idea what it is in an area that is supposedly lifeless. And initially Zanduli's like, okay, this is awesome. Now we actually have eyes on some evidence of an enemy hereby. Let's go track them down and see what's going on. But it's a bit overshadowed because she realizes very quickly Akina's partner is gone. And it kind of overshadows it. The partner's name is Owadi, by the way. And she's furious at her because, again, the Zanduli and the Wadroon as a faction deeply care about minimizing casualties. So with Zanduli ticked, she basically tells Akina, you stay here, rest up because she's exhausted. I'm going to go look for Owada myself. And she heads out there. And there's kind of this cool scene where she encounters a sandstorm that's like whispering things at her. And she's kind of getting a awake version of the nightmare senses that everybody else is getting. And at a certain point, it kind of consumes her, almost like this sandstorm is part of like a psychic backlash, falls down and is like losing her mind until Akina, who presumably had rested and had time to catch up to her in the hunt for her partner, popped into the sandstorm and snapped her out of it, whatever kind of psychosis she was in. Together, as they were kind of meandering out, they found Owadi dead with a dagger in her hands. And now initially, Zanduli was like, oh my gosh, somebody murdered one of my riders, and is like really passionate about going out and finding whoever this might be, until Akina basically tells her, no, like the madness that you were in, it got her, and so she killed herself. Like that's the thing that's afflicting all of us right now. And so Zanduli accepted it. Now from this point on, Zanduli's like, okay, never gonna happen again. Now all of our ships are gonna operate in groups of 4. Everybody keep an eye on the other 3 idiots around you. And as her, food supplies are getting built up by the gatherers and hunters, she's looking around going, okay, we're good here with our primary mission, but we in our time here have not learned a single thing about our actual enemy. And so now that the hunters have kind of gotten at least the cream of the crop when it comes to food, she starts sending them out to do recon. Learn a little bit more about our enemies deep into an area called the Lost Lands. And the lands of the dead, as we mentioned before, while she remained at camp to maintain discipline, conserve rations, make sure nobody was losing it. From this kind of scouting party, 2 forces of the dead were spotted here. One was engaged with her cousin, Zanduli's cousin, another small warband expedition, off to one side. And to the other side, there's another contingent of dead armies settling inside of an old city ruin. And so with this Zanduli dispatches a rider, tell everyone what's going back on the Oasis, that we're being attacked by 2 massive armies of the undead, that my cousin is being engaged and I'm going to support him. Right, information is key, sends out the agile troops, and then mobilizes her main camp to go basically join forces with her cousin. She does that pretty quickly and easily, and then the 2 forces then combine with Zanduli in charge and move towards this city of the dead. Now the battle was kind of being mopped up by the time Zanduli got to the first one, but at this point, now looking at the city, she has her first-hand experience really of understanding what the enemy's battle readiness and like their tactics are. What is this new thing fight like? And so she decided to follow a captain's plan, which is we're going to do some hit and run. And so basically what is started as a hunting party becomes an ad hoc war group, and all they're trying to do is smash against the enemy, see what they do, fall back with as few casualties as possible, and report it home. Because they're not like a full army. They didn't pre-order the Tauntors. They are not ready for this. And so this event becomes known as the Battle of Davina Ruins. And for this, the Wadroon, it really revealed a few things. First of all, the dead were not an easy enemy. They were probably initially thinking, oh, they move quite slowly. But then when you see the highly marshaled ranks of the Old Dominion in action, if you don't have context for that before you just roll up to them, that's not good. That's a tough lesson to learn. I'm really glad she learned that before like a actual Wadroon army showed up. And this little force got battered away, like they bounced off like a rubber ball. Zanduli had to retreat earlier than she had hoped, did not really cause any significant damage. However, a few things did happen here. Remember, she's a scouting party. So she scouted. She understands now the enemy, kind of a base sense of how they fight, even though she hasn't seen all the things that are up their sleeve. But she also notices what they're doing. The dead here, instead of attacking her cousin or whatever, these guys were focused on excavation. A few leaders were kind of mind-slaving all of these soldiers to just dig and excavate large temples and tombs and structures, and it was noted how quickly their response was. So like, they're kind of understanding, oh, they don't really have a mind of their own, so when the leaders see us and get mad, by instinctually the entire army does, that they're all connected. So understanding the response time of an enemy is very important if you are a hit and run style tactic army, or faction rather. And so despite a few losses, not a ton, not enough to be like super sad about, Zanduli then takes this camp that she had, her cousin's army as well, and flees back west to the Oasis, basically partially successful in her mission. She may not have found the enemy's base, but she did find what they're most interested in and where they want to be, which is this city, which is useful information. And so like all these videos, let's roll into why is this cool. Hit and run armies are kind of always a strange thing for Wargames to cover in an interesting way. By that I mean, in real life, a lot of the hit and run factions that we have are very like mundane. It tends to just be a few people because it's, you travel lightly, discreetly, you pop into an area, cause a bunch of noise, and then you're gone. Because again, discreet. You run into the thick jungle and you're just gone. But the last thing we can say about hit and run factions in Conquest, especially with the Wadroon, is they are, first of all, anything but discreet because of the screaming dinosaurs and all of the spears being hurled. But also they're not boring, because instead of just being, attack for the sake of attack, what we're getting a glimpse into here is how do the Wadroon, from their perspective, learn about an enemy. When they encounter a new thing, what do? Well, her first instinct was, first of all, to go push up against it. How do they fight? What are their reaction times? Who seems to be the leaders? These are all things that she's thinking. Probably coming up with a plan of, okay, now we need to figure out what happens if we take out one of those leaders. How does that trickle down to all these other guys? They fight in tight ranked formations. That means flanking them or ambushes are going to be extremely devastating to them. And we're learning more about what they want. If the undead only want to uncover more undead cities to grow their armies, well, that information can definitely influence where the Wadroon set up their encampments to either stop, delay, or monitor what the Old Dominion is doing. Once you know what somebody wants, then you can hunt them, right? At this point, they've just become, Old Dominion became prey, and now you know what your prey is hunting for. Traps can be set, plans can be made. all of that good nonsense. And now, Zanduli's story here comes from the living world, and if you don't know about this, I'd love to share just a quick moment here at the end. Basically, every week, Parabellum puts on their website a kind of a choose-your-own-adventure style thing. It's a short lore blurb, and at the end of it, there's like 3 to 4 choices that you can make, and whoever, whichever choice gets the most votes at the end of the week, that becomes the lore going forward. In this way, players can kind of influence the tide of events that unfold for the game Conquest. Zanduli's story was a part of that. And I think it's really interesting. There's some cool tales to come out of this. I'd love to see more things like this. For example, what's the same kind of story from, say, a Nord's perspective fighting the Dwegholm? What do they think they're looking at? How do they approach learning about it and think creatively about warfare to fight against them? I don't know. Tell me your favorite matchups that you would like to see. Like, what perspective do you want to look from to look at what enemy? I mean, I'm a Wadroon player through and through, so like, I'm into this. Just show me more of these. Give me more of these captains who are like, look at these punks. I got an idea of how to fight them. Die hard, which is like my strategy, but Zanduli's better than I am, so I guess that's fair. Anyway, friends, leave your ideas in the comments down below. I'll be covering more Conquest here soon. Thank you so much for supporting me, and happy wargaming.